when I first saw latte art. And it's so weird when we think about it today. It doesn't even make sense. But back in the day, back in 2002, nobody knew what latte art was.
Right.
There was no latte art in Austin. There was no latte art in Texas.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Make Haste Slowly. I'm Alison Backliv.
And I'm Michael Backliv. We're here with JP Hogan from JP's Java, who I used to work for back in the day in 2003. It was my first coffee job and my introduction to specialty coffee. Very few people probably know this, but sort of specialty coffee in the South sort of started at JP's Java. And we'll get into the story of this because it's actually pretty cool, some of the things that happened at JP's. And I was so fortunate to get to be a part of that. And that's kind of where I learned the love of coffee. And JP taught me a lot. So welcome, JP.
Welcome.
And thank you very much. It's good to be here.
And seriously, coffee people, like, pay attention because this is origin stories right here. Seriously,
origin stories.
This is good stuff. Thank you so much for being on, JP. This is so fun.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
So what's your most memorable experience with a cup of coffee?
Well, that's I have a lot of memories. So I getting a question all of a sudden. Talking's fine when I get a question. I would say the most interesting time I had with coffee, or the interesting thing I saw was when I first saw latte art. And it's so weird when we think about it today. It doesn't even make sense. But back in the day, back in 2002, nobody knew what latte art was.
Right.
There was no latte art in Austin. There was no latte art in Texas. And I had gone to the Specialty Coffee Association convention in 2002. I had already bought the property. The construction was underway at the coffee shop at JP's, but I hadn't bought equipment yet, and I hadn't decided on what coffee I was going to use. But I really wanted to have something quality, and so I went to the convention. And at the convention, they had this barista competition that I watched. It was the very first competition ever for the United States.
Okay.
And it was amazing. And that's where I saw the art and everything that was going on. And I saw the winner, and it was just something, I had never seen anything like it. And after that, I went to a hotel bar, and I was waiting for my son. He lived in LA, and this was in, close to LA. It wasn't LA. But so I was in this bar, and I got a drink, and I was walking, and all of a sudden, I don't know why, but I spilt part of my drink on a table. And I looked, and I recognized the guy. I had seen him at the competition. He was kind of standing off to the side during the competition. And I told him that, and he asked me what I was doing there. And I said, I'm about to start a coffee shop. And he said, well, sit down. And so I sat down and talked with him. That was Jeff Babcock. He was the owner of Zoka Coffee. And the guy he was with was his partner, and he was the original roaster for Starbucks when Starbucks was small, when they only had like 3 shops before they were bought out and became Starbucks. And we were talking, and they asked me, what coffee are you using? And I said, I hadn't decided yet. And they said, well, you have to use our coffee. And they said, what kind of equipment? And I said, I haven't decided yet. And you have to use La Mazzocca. So I they were pretty much telling me what I needed to do. And but it was really interesting, and their barista is the one that won the competition. So, and their espresso Palladino, which we ended up serving, it was the first espresso to win the first championship competition. So I ended up going and visiting with him at his shop, and was real impressed. He was just so into quality and doing it right, and it really attracted me to to that because that's what I wanted for our shop, and decided pretty much right there that was what we were going to do. And so when I came back, we started working on that, and I got my machine from him. Also, we used the urn. Do you remember the urn? Was that big machine that you'd stir?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that, he highly recommended that, which I thought was great. Pete's Coffee out of Seattle used that, and that was kind of their signature. And I, to this day, I think it's one of the best coffee brewers there is. It's just big and bulky, but it was great. And then there's a girl named Brown and Cerna, who was one of his baristas. She came down and trained our original staff. And that's where everybody was amazed. What is this latte art and all this that we're doing? It had never been seen before. It's kind of hard to understand that nowadays because it's so prevalent. So she trained the staff on how to make espressos, and she ended up winning the national championship in 2005. So that was pretty cool. In fact, Scott Hlatke, who was my manager at that time, and John Johnson, God rest his soul, they both competed in 2005. They were the first to represent the state of Texas at the National Barista Championship. We didn't have to go through regionals because there was none. So, but she won that year, and that was a lot of fun. And John did fantastic. And at the very end, he spilled his last drink, putting it on a tray. Otherwise, I saw the judge's paperwork after he was done, and he was doing fantastic.
Wow.
So we were kind of disappointed. He was devastated by that. So that's pretty much the way that we started with the quality of the coffee, and that good and well, what's happened since. I mean, it's there are some really great coffee shops in Austin. Yours, of course, is the best.
Thanks, JP.
And it was the other part about when you're talking about coffee, it was wonderful watching you guys, to be honest with you. You come in, you start working, and you start having kids, and just to see your family start, and then to see where it is today is amazing. And then all the relationships, as you well know, you start to see with your shop, you see people getting married. That's been just wonderful to watch.
So how did you get into coffee? Like why coffee shops? Where did this whole idea come from?
Well, I was in Houston. I had been in the brokerage business for 20 some odd years, and I got out of that. I started a cleaning business. And after about 5 years of that, I kind of was getting tired of it. But what I would do, I thought, well, I want to do something. What's my passion? You always reach that point where you go, what's my passion? And every day I'd go to this coffee shop and sit in it and read and have my coffee and then go home. But I did it every day. And one day I was sitting there writing, and I wrote, my passion is coming to this coffee shop and reading. I mean, it's just what I enjoyed doing. And I thought, well, why don't you get a coffee shop and sit there and read? And so I thought, well, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going back to Austin. I was there in the early 70s, and I've always wanted to get back. So, that gave me the opportunity to go to Austin again. But I couldn't, when I got there, I thought, well, I need to find a place to live first. I was staying with my sister, and I started driving around looking for a place. But every day I just start looking at location, not really having a clear idea of how I was going to do all this. My son told me, he said, Dad, look around campus where Crown and Anchor is, and Posse East, and that North Campus area. And so I went there, and there was this place, Lucy's Cakes, and I drove up into it. It was in business, and I thought this would be perfect. It was a gas station turned into a cake shop. And I went home that night and I started looking up to who owned it. And I found the owner was in San Antonio. And I called him that night and I said, I'm calling out of the blue, but would you be interested in selling that property? He said, I can't believe you called me tonight. I just decided I'm selling that property. And I went down the next day to San Antonio, met him, his daughter and brother and son-in-law were running the cake shop there. And he told me, he said, well, he's not going to be too happy that you're, they don't want me to sell that property. And he said, but, and he asked me what I was going to do with it. And I said, I'd rather not tell you because I was afraid somebody'd steal my idea. Mm-hmm. And so we shook on it and I didn't have the money. So I went back to Austin, and the following night I was up packing because I was going to drive to Houston and raise some money because that was what I did for a living when I was a brokerage business. And I know, I can raise money. So I thought I'm going to Houston to talk to some people. And my brother-in-law, Jack Gullahorn, I was staying at their house, and he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Houston to get some money. And he went, oh, what if your brother and I did it? And I went, well, it'd make it a lot easier, So I got them involved in it. And then, about 3 months later, I closed on the property. It was around Christmas time. So when I started driving around the property around Christmas and nobody was there, it was a ghost town, I started getting a little worried. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And that ended up being the truth. Christmas time around that area.
Gospel.
Your business goes to, it's everybody's gone. Yeah. And then in the summer, it goes down about 30%. Yeah. But, so really, that's how it happened. I mean, I didn't have this, I had always drank coffee, but I didn't have some, I wanted a place, because you did the same thing. You want a place where people can gather and feel like family and relax. And that's kind of what I was doing for myself, but I wanted to do it for other people and allow me to do it too, and work there. So that's how it started. And then the other part was just, well, how am I going to do this and have a quality shop? And that's why I went to Seattle and found that, the rest is history.
Wow.
Now, at the time, also, I might mention that I had gone down to Houston because when I was looking for equipment, I ended up meeting Mike McKim with
Cuvée.
Yeah, well, he didn't have Cuvée at the time, but he was doing stuff. He had it in his garage, but he represented La Mazzocca, I guess. And I went down there and he made me some coffee in his garage. And so I was thinking about doing that at the time, but wanted to go to the convention. So but he wanted to, get something going in Austin. I think did you use his coffee?
Yeah.
In the beginning? Yeah, because I introduced you to him when you were starting, and I thought, well, this would be an opportunity to put you guys together. Yeah. And
yeah. Wow. Well, I'm just thinking about the timeline, right? Because you said, so you opened JP's Java in
2002.
2002. Okay. And that was also the year of the first Specialty Coffee Association convention. So basically,
that was earlier in the year. And
so basically specialty coffee was
I think, unless my years are off, because I think everything's so squeezed, but I believe that's right.
Yeah. So basically specialty coffee as an industry was being born. It was not common. And so what I think is so unique is that you come to Austin and you start this specialty coffee business. But I mean, honestly, I think at that time, coffee shops were a dime a dozen in Austin. Like it was kind of known for.
And the coffee was very subpar.
And all the coffee was bad.
and dirty.
Dirty.
I mean, I nothing against those people that are still there, but.
No, it's just how it was. You just had grungy coffee and it was, anyway. I felt like it was like throw a stick, you hit a coffee shop, but you come in And Bree, you're the first person to really bring specialty coffee to Austin, right? Like nobody,
Yeah.
no one had a Marzocco.
Well, and prepare and the preparation. I think I'm not like Texas Coffee Traders has been there forever, and they've done a great job. I don't want to say that they don't have
Totally.
but I think the preparation of the coffee definitely had never it far surpassed anybody in terms of that, which has everything to do, as you well know, with the taste of an espresso. I mean, the reason that I loved latte art more than anything was because if my baristas were doing latte art, I knew they were steaming the milk correctly to make a quality drink. Because if you don't, you can't make art. So, but David Schomer from Seattle had espresso coffee. I mean, he wrote espresso coffee. I wrote that down somewhere. The name of his shop was Espresso Vivace. It's still there, but he wrote the book in 1989 of of how to do latte art, which I used with all my baristas. I'm sure you've seen it, but I visited him also while I was up in Seattle and visited his shop. And latte art, started in early 1900s, but until 1989, 1990, he's the one who introduced it really to Seattle. And so it was just a local thing. And it was then it became an East Coast, West Coast thing. Flyover country had no idea. I certainly didn't. And I know anybody I know didn't know that. But, the same thing happened kind of with the Clover. When the Clover came out, we were using the urn, and then Clover came out, the Clover coffee maker, for people that don't know about that. But it was a mix between like a French press, but it sucked it out, sucked the drink out. Was a fantastic. I still to this day think it's the best. It's just me, but I think it's the best brewer made. And all the really elite shops on the East Coast, West Coast, the ones that were using it when it came out. And I think there were only 300 made, something like that. But I bought one and then bought another one. They were super expensive, way too expensive. But it was just a fantastic machine. Then Starbucks bought them out. Howard Schultz went to the convention one year and saw the machine, drank the coffee. He said, "This is the best coffee I've ever had in my life," and bought the company. Well, it was good for the company, but it was terrible for all of us. And I was talking to everybody on the phone that had them. They were all going, "Get rid of it. Get rid of your equipment right now." And everybody sold their equipment immediately because they didn't want to be beholden to Starbucks. Because if you have a problem and need parts or whatever, you got to get it from Starbucks now. And it didn't make sense that Starbucks was doing it because they're into speed, not, something that's going to take time and do an individual cup of coffee. But he did take it off the market.
Wow.
And what's really interesting to me, and I just did this with observation, but those shops that were all using Clover, all had to do something, and they all went to drip, and everybody followed them to drip. And that's where drip started, was everybody getting rid of their Clovers. I mean, I may be speaking out of school here, but that's what I observed. And, the drip just, I don't, the pour over is what I meant, not the drip, the pour over. And that's how I make my coffee every morning. And it makes a great cup of coffee, but that Clover was just an amazing piece of equipment. I still have my two. I don't know if I mentioned that. They're all, I've got them in crates.
What are you going to do with them?
Do they work?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Well, I tried to get Mike to take one, but he wouldn't take it.
I just imagine trying to get that thing serviced.
I tried to get him to buy one, and he didn't want to buy it.
Right. It sounds
That's a
like
difference. But
we need to open a coffee museum and have, different varieties of brewing methods, serving coffee. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, do you still save cups? You said you saved cups from coffee shops. You wanted my cup, and I don't think I ever gave you one.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Allison?
Yeah, we have, I think it was when we were opening our location at Lamar Union, and we have this old cabinet, and we were putting some historical
that's right.
like items in the cabinet, or historical to us.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a cup anymore. And so that's why I was asking. I would still pay a lot of money for a JP's Java cup.
I wouldn't, I would give you a cup.
I'll buy it for you. Put it in my museum.
I don't have a lot of them, but I got some.
I mean,
and all my T-shirts are all worn out now. It's just kind of sad.
I'd pay good money for one of those too. I have a picture of one of our staff members wearing one. I was like, oh, I wish I could get one. I mean, JP's Java was such an influence, I think, in the city, because I remember, of course, like lots of students, lots of people who are just like, give me coffee. But as the specialty coffee scene and that the culture around coffee was expanding, it's like, it became like, if anyone knew anything about specialty coffee, they knew they had to come to JP's Java, because JP's was serving Zoka, using a Marzocco, steaming the milk, doing the latte art. It's like JP's Java was the place. And so I think it gathered some really interesting and like-minded people at the time. And
yeah,
I think one fun story is like
that's definitely true.
John Johnson and I and Patrick Pierce went to the first latte art throwdown. It's called a barista jam in College Station, and we were all they're having a latte art contest, and John Johnson, myself, and Patrick were the only ones of like 30 people that actually could do latte art. Everybody else was like making dots and stirring stuff and all this kind of stuff. So it was really funny to see like how like sort of like what you brought in. And now we have latte art contests where people are doing swans and dragons and all kinds of stuff, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And if you just go get coffee, or generally if you go to a decent coffee shop, you're going to get latte art on your drink, which like I said, I mean, it's just weird to think of that. It just, nobody knows. It was just non-existent basically back then.
When you started, did you imagine that the coffee scene would be what it is now in Austin?
I had a feeling, yes. Yeah. Yes. And I wanted to do what I could to help it along too. I knew because of the excitement that I got being in Seattle and seeing it there, Austin was just primed for the same thing. And that's what happened. Shops started popping up all over the place, and my barista started leaving and going to those shops, which was good. I mean, it helped spread it around. I mean, I was real supportive of you leaving. I hated for you to leave, but I was real supportive of your shop. And I think you worked for a year while it was being built, right?
Yeah, I was there for 2003 till a little late 2005, and then I kind of had to. It was just too much for me to start working on, so that's when I left.
Because you told me, I'll be leaving in about 6. However, I said, well, the first thing you're going to learn is it's going to be twice that long,
and twice as expensive.
It takes a lot longer, you think, and then you got to go through all the city, and oh my gosh, I had to take out a toilet, put it back in after I got inspected. They made me take the urinal out of the men's bathroom because it wasn't low enough, and the pipes went through the parking lot. I mean, because JP's was underground, and so I finally I took it down. I just took it off, and then he came in, passed, and then the next week I put it back on. So we had the urinal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's a kind of crazy story to
Yeah.
talk about, but
No,
but it's it was just the city was just I had to take down or take off my deck, and then I had to put it back up again.
mhm.
We can
Oh
empathize
well,
with the bizarre interactions with the city for sure. I just realized I just saw today
yeah.
that West Lynn no longer has a urinal. It's like, oh, cool.
Oh really?
Yeah. I mean, but
Yeah.
starting coffee shops, right?
Okay.
You're not thinking about I really want to become a plumber. I really want to become an
No.
electrician. I really want to become a marketing expert. I really want to become a payroll expert. Like, um, how did you embrace or manage to tackle all the things that come along with running a coffee shop that are not coffee?
Well, I've been in business for. I mean, I was, when I was in the brokerage business. I did, so I was into numbers all the time. Still am. I still, trade, but um, that and I did tons of research, and I mean, just I'm a numbers person.
Mm.
So that, from an accounting standpoint, that's pretty easy. That came totally natural to me. Then I started my restroom cleaning service, which that was pretty crazy. I mean, to go
Mm.
from the brokerage business to a restroom cleaning service, which ended up doing great, but it was amazing. I was going to start a recycling company. I was going to do. There were so many apartments in Houston. I was going to do a business that picked up recycling from apartment complexes,
Mm.
so that the apartment complex didn't have to have as many bins and all that. But, I started putting all the numbers together, and the numbers didn't work. That was
Yeah.
part of crunching numbers.
Mhm.
It just wouldn't make money.
Right.
And so I threw that idea out. And then the cleaning service, I hate going to a gas station or a restaurant that has filthy restrooms.
Mm.
And so I had, and then there were places, there were Swisher and Fikes were two restroom cleaning service, but all they did was clean the toilet and sink. And so I thought, well, no, somebody needs to come and clean the walls, the floors, and everything. So I offered that,
Mm.
uh, and one day while I was still a broker, I went and talked to a gas station and said, I want to clean your restroom. It took me 6 hours.
Wow.
My girlfriend at the time was going like, what are
Ugh.
you doing? And I'm in the restroom cleaning it, right? Just to figure out how long is it going to take. And then I decided, I went, to the office. I told everybody, I'm starting a restroom cleaning service. They said, you're crazy. But I did, I had like 90 Diamond Shamrocks. I had the Houston's
Wow.
restaurants,
Wow.
all the Whataburgers in the Houston area, Home Depots, you know, and they loved me.
Right.
And
Right. So you came to
so,
JP's with like a significant amount of business experience, and
right. I'm sorry, that kind of went off the,
you were
No,
you
that's
can
great.
not.
edit all that out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the history, right? And it's relevant because Michael and I were clueless, and so it sounds like you at least had some relevant experience and weren't maybe as like surprised,
Yeah.
or had maybe you
I
didn't
was
have as much of a
49 when
learning
I
curve.
opened it.
Right. You were
Yeah. I
49.
mean, business wise, no. QuickBooks.
Yeah.
QuickBooks.
Hey,
That's what I used.
holla.
Mhm.
Um, and then the maintenance, I had David Shamel, who, I don't know if you remember David,
Yeah.
but
Uh-huh.
he fixed anything that went wrong.
Yeah.
Where do you turn off the water? He'd come down there and turn off the water, or fix the
Mm.
toilets, or fix the drains, and
Mm.
he was awesome.
What were you going to say,
Yeah, I
babe?
think for me, it's
So
like it's like the thing I learned was like the going into opening up Medici was, I learned like the management stuff from you, from Scott, and then, how to make coffee, how to serve coffee, customer flow, bar flow. It's like I kind of came out with a lot of that knowledge. And then I kind of had to come and learn the stuff that you kind of came into your opening JPs with, like balance sheets, P&Ls, profit and loss, and how
Right.
to match up everything, all the invoices and paying bills. And I was like, those were all way new to me. So, but I definitely got the managing and the coffee skills from working at it. That's why I tell everybody, is like, if you want to open a business, go work there first and learn,
Yeah.
because it's just so much you pick up by just being around. And
Mhm.
Didn't
we were
Katie
always open
Hallett
to
end up
talk.
being your accountant or something, or your
Mhm.
bookkeeper? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She was
Almost
awesome.
she's still awesome. She was with us for 13 years.
Yeah.
And then she retired.
Well,
Yeah.
their whole family
Yeah.
really, like, it's a fantastic,
Yeah.
yeah.
fantastic crew.
Yeah. They're great.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Say a lot of those people that I've met at JP's and how a lot of those people are still friends, like even to this day.
Oh yeah.
Katie Hallett,
Katie Fox.
John Johnson, who passed away, Katie Fox, Scott. Like anytime I go by through, actually, I haven't seen Scott in a while, but anytime I go through Fredericksburg, we'll try to, catch up with him. And
He's in in Maine now.
he's in Maine. Oh, when did
Yeah.
he move to Maine?
6 months ago, maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cameron.
Yeah. It's amazing. I love catching up with people
I'm curious,
and seeing what they're doing today.
who were some of your favorite characters or personalities from JP's?
Oh gosh, that's a real difficult question. I mean, I enjoyed I just enjoyed everybody. I don't know. Scott and I got to be, really close, and I enjoyed John. John Johnson was fantastic, and when I first started, I went to my daughter Noelle had just started school at UT, and I went to her house, and I guess she was a sophomore, and met a bunch of girls, her girlfriends, and they all started. I hired 3 of them, so they were 3 of my original ones,
Wow.
which was amazing. And I just have a John story that I don't know if I should tell or not, but
Yeah.
well,
He would want you to.
one of these girls went in. It was at night, and John was working, and she went. See, I won't tell you her name because she probably wouldn't like it. But so she went into the back and took off her clothes and put her apron on. So all she had was her apron, and she went into where John was, and he looked and was kind of thrown back. It was hilarious. And then she went in and put her clothes back on again. But so he just saw the rear, but he was just shocked. And he talked about it for years after that. So
Shocked in the best kind of way.
I'm sure there's lots of crazy things that happen that I don't know about. But yeah, there were so many people I've met, and I even, I forget about, and then all of a sudden I'll see them or somebody will mention their name. And I go, oh, wow. Yeah, I remember this. I remember that. I remember him. I remember her. And
It seems like you were so close with, like, it was interesting to see sort of the community that was developed around there. It's like you were really close with the Posse people and the Crown and Anchor. And I know there was kind of like a community of a community of a community. And also just the interesting part of, like, when school was in, there's all these students, but then when school was out, it's like the neighborhood kind of was there, even though it wasn't as big as whenever school was in. But the ebb and flow of that area was really, the few years that I was there was really neat to see.
Well, Greg, who owns a Crown and Anchor, we got to be really good friends. And David Peck and I were real close friends. He owned the Posse East, and I used to go to the Posse when I was here in '73. So it was a drive-through at the time. So you could go inside. I never went inside. You just drive through, get your beer, and then because I lived right up Duval from there, and but he and I mean, he and I really got to be good friends. He helped me a lot, actually, with a lot of advice. He bought the JP's property and owned it for about 6 months, years back. And he was going to make it a package store and started putting in the coolers and everything. And, but he couldn't get his license, because it's, there's no license there. And he told me, he said, there's no way you're going to get a license. Well, I ended up getting a beer license. And that was another fun thing because we were right down from the stadium. And so game days were awesome. And we'd have what we call walking beers. We'd sell beer right there on the sidewalk, and people would get there. Scott would ride on the sidewalk 16 ounces from the stadium. And so you'd get your 16-ounce cup of beer. And by the time you get to the stadium, you just can throw it in the trash and walk in the stadium. So it was pretty cool. And then Greg up at Crown and Anchor saw that. And so he started, he had a sign that said, you're 16 ounces from JP's. So you can take 16 ounces to JP's and then 16 ounces to the stadium. It was kind of cool. It was a
cool.
real that whole neighborhood was just a real family oriented type. It still is. I'm just not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of signs, it's making me think of your JP's Java sign and your logo. And I was wondering if you could tell us how you chose your logo.
I was real into the Mayan calendar at the time, when I was doing all that reading at that coffee shop. I was reading, all this Mayan and Toltec, and, I've always been on a quest all my life, actually, which I've kind of come full circle. I'm in San Antonio now. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I came to San Antonio about a year and a half ago, and I've kind of come full circle in my quest. But that came from the symbol of Uhu, which is one of those little pictographs, a Mayan pictograph. Uhu represents it's the last pictograph on the calendar. It represents 2012. And 2012 is the end of the Mayan calendar. And, I read all about it and what's going to happen in 2012. Whoa, is it the end of the world or, that kind of thing. End of the Mayan I'm sure you heard about the end of the Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
I got so into it that I realized afterwards, I said, gosh, that was my prophecy. Yeah, I was gone, not the world. That happened in 2015. So I was a little bit off on that, but if you tweet, I just really like the 2012 GIF, I guess you call it, and then I had a guy, I can't remember his name, that tweaked it to look like an owl because an owl was kind of my medicine animal, and I tweaked the two together. The guy that did that is the one, you remember Tower Records where they'd have all those stencils of Johnny Cash and all that stuff? You remember that?
Yep.
Well, he's the one who did all that.
Wow.
I just can't remember his name. He's a great artist. But he tweaked that all together and made the logo. And so, yeah, that's kind of where, I was just real into that.
Okay. That's
at that time.
That's fascinating. I think I had assumed it would have related more to like your Native American practice and spirituality. So it sounds like but it was related more to the Mayan calendar. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, it's, they kind of coincided in that it's native, the Mayans were definitely natives.
Right.
And that's what I meant about, I guess, my path or back in the 80s, I had a problem and ended up going to treatment and went to my first 12-step program was at treatment. And I was real happy that, you had to believe in a higher power because I definitely believe in a higher power. So that was no problem for me. And with that, that's kind of where, my quest just kind of really started. It didn't start. It just went off on a different direction. I was raised Catholic, and it just so it kind of went in a different direction, and or the same direction, but just in a different way. And as uh, I, through that, there was a men's group, a men's uh, retreat in Austin, Texas. I was living in Houston at the time, but this was a men's movement was starting, and it was Robert Bly, I think. I don't know if that name rings, or
Mm-hmm.
Campbell. Also, Campbell
Campbell.
wrote the books. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you're familiar with him either. Oh
Yeah.
well, but it was a men's movement, and all these men met, and we had this big uh, retreat. And Time Magazine was there. I mean, it was big at the time. It
Wow.
made the
Oh
front of
wow.
Time Magazine, and it went on for several years. But this was at the beginning of it, and they did a sweat lodge there. And when I went in the sweat lodge, I did the sweat lodge. I came out. I was like, "Wow, that's amazing!" And I talked to I met the guy that did it, and we became real good friends, Lance Crawford. And it turned out he was a sun dancer with the Southern Ute. And so I went
Mm.
up with him that year to the Southern Ute, and I saw him Sundance. And being there, I was just blown away. And I just
Mm.
thought, this is me. I felt like I was at home.
Mm.
And I met another person that ended up becoming an adopted brother of mine, Tim Sakia. He's from the Northwest Territories, and he was dancing at Sitting Bulls camp in South Dakota, and asked me to come up there. So I took my son, and we both drove up there. And I think 1989, and it was blew me away again, and I just loved it. And so I went every year from '89 to 2000. And
Mm.
then in 2000, I started dancing Sundance, and danced 2000 through 2000. I danced 12. I committed for 12. You commit for 4 years. I did it 3 times, so
Wow.
12 years.
Wow.
Wow.
And it was, I love ceremony. I think that comes from the church that I was raised in. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about the
Mm.
Catholic Church is
Mm.
the ceremony. And really, ceremony just helps me focus. And it's funny because now when I say it came full circle, now I moved back to San Antonio, and now I'm back at St. Peter's Catholic Church that I went to kindergarten at and had
Oh
my
wow.
first communion. So
Wow.
I've been called back to my original church. I
Yeah.
had, and I stopped practicing the Catholic faith.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would go like once a year, twice a year with my mom and dad or whatever, but to commit myself and really start practicing the faith again, I didn't start again till about a year and a half ago. And
Mm.
it came to going to the exact church, and that to me, those were my mystical, magical years when I was a kid, from 4 years old to third grade. And so it's just and it's a beautiful church, and going back there at least once a week, sometimes twice or 3 times a week. And we lived right down the street. It's just been it's been fantastic. So
That's awesome.
that's where I am now with all that.
Yeah.
I love
But
it.
I'm 70.
You have
I
so
have
much.
a lot of time to do. I mean, it's taken a
Yeah.
lot of time to do all these things, but
Uh-huh.
the years
That's really
go
beautiful.
really fast.
It's
That's maybe like as we kind of come to the end, I'd love to hear like your experience with sort of bringing the JP story to a close. Like, how was that for you,
mm.
and what does like I don't know how it came about, or like what kind of things you were going through personally with that? Because I could only
Mhm.
imagine, you know.
When it closed,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
oh, it was terrible.
Mm.
I, it was a wonderful, wonderful. I mean, well, I identified with it so much that it was my identity,
Mm.
and which I didn't know until it was over because I felt kind of lost.
Mhm.
What's my identity anymore? Um, and because I talk about JPs. Well, that's kind of weird when you're JP, but it was a third. It was something outside of
Sure.
myself. It's like you saying, uh, I always say it wrong. Medici.
You did it. Oh yeah.
Um, and but and it was a tough deal because everybody the people that were there loved it, but it wasn't making money. So I mean, I made a living, but it was so seasonal that everything you made during the good season you gave up during the other. I'm sure you know about that. Well, you've been on Guadalupe. You were on
Yep.
Guadalupe,
Yeah.
and it's the nature of the beast in that area. I mean, when I sold JP the building, 7-Eleven was there. They went out of business. The building's boarded up. I mean, it's just not, particularly with today's rents, you're not going to be able to support a business in there, a retail business. But I had, there were a couple of times I've looked at, opening another shop, but it was just hard to justify. And so it was a real hard decision, but I was pretty much, my brother and brother-in-law pretty much said, well, I think it's time, and so I ended up doing it. It was heartbreaking. And yeah, it was really heartbreaking. I hated it. And that's what I got pretty much from the people that went there. They didn't like it either, but just the nature of life. And but yeah, it was very sad.
But you did have a really
That
great
answer your
party.
question?
Yeah, it was just it was a really great party that we had at the JP's, and got to see
Yeah.
all the alumni of JP kind of come and hang out and kind of say goodbye to it. And I think you really kind of closed that for all of us. That moment was kind of like you kind of, I guess, symbolically kind of really
Yeah, that was,
you
I really enjoyed that party. It was great.
Mhm.
I got rid of all my beer. I gave away all
That's
the rest of my kegs.
Yeah.
right.
But
Oh,
it was wonderful. Well, it was a great experience, and the people that I've met, it's just, I'm very, very grateful for the experience. Let me put it that way.
right.
Very grateful.
And it was sad when it closed. We were very sad. And it's real. I mean, it's real life. It is hard, and you can't just sustain something that's not sustainable. But I do have a sense of wonder. This is where I'm going to get emotional. I think I have a moment in every episode where I'm just going to get emotional. So I'm going to lean into it. That what you started was like the origin story of specialty coffee in Austin. It has impacted the culture of the whole city. Because, I mean, sorry. Michael and I, what we have gone on to do would not have happened if we had not had the experiences that we did at JP's. And not just learning the good coffee, but experiencing the power of the community that comes out of it. And so it wouldn't have happened. And we are so grateful that you did what you did and made the sacrifices that you made for however many years, suffering through, what is it, like May, June, July, November, December, January, February.
Yeah.
How many of seasons you suffered through to keep the store open, but the seeds of what you started really have changed the culture of the city. And
Well,
I'm really grateful.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's an honor.
Yeah.
It's just really
I
an honor.
appreciate that very much. I appreciate it very,
Yeah.
very much.
Cheers.
And I miss it.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I, it's, yeah.
well,
But you guys have carried on.
we have the ritual of coffee matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ritual. It's a rhythm that is become so life-giving in more than just caffeine,
So where do you go to in
It's
San Antonio?
community. It's community. Pardon me?
Oh, where do you go to in San Antonio? What's your coffee shop?
I get my coffee sent to me.
Oh, there you go.
Who are you drinking these days?
I have a service that they send it from a different shop, different roasters every week.
Yeah.
I have no idea where it's coming from. That's another business I looked into actually.
Mm-hmm.
But and I got these people because I was testing it out. But I'll
send you a bag.
Yeah, send me a bag. That'd be awesome.
Is there anything that you prefer or like?
Not really. I like trying everything out,
Okay. Cool. I'll send you a crazy one and a normal one.
Okay. All right. I'll do my son got me some equipment, a nice pour over equipment, and I use a nice, real with that thin spout and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that every morning and I really enjoy it. And so I just tried different coffees all the time.
Awesome. So one of the things that we like to ask everybody at the very end is, what is one recommendation that you have? It could be for food, it could be a life thing, or something that you would recommend for us or for anybody.
Listeners?
Yeah.
Well,
listeners?
If I were to make a recommendation, I mean, I think you're already doing it, but is to change every day. I mean, keep changing. I mean, and what I mean by that is evolve. One of my biggest mistakes in every business I've been in is to get comfortable. I'll get to a point, like my goal is I want to get this up to where I don't, it can run without me. That was my main goal. Well, the one problem with that is it's nice to get there, and you need to be there because you can't be there all the time. You have to rely on people. But if you don't keep evolving with new ideas and innovation, you're going to get left behind, and you're going to get stagnant. And I see you doing that. I've been real impressed with you in those terms. This podcast is a perfect example of it. It might seem like a small thing or a small thing compared to everything else, but everything you do is just keep evolving and make sure not to get comfortable. Otherwise you'll go away. It's just the nature of things. The only constant is change. And I'd say that's my advice. Just keep up with change as best as you can. And keeping your basic core beliefs and everything. But I'm saying, just change with the tide.
Yeah. Wow.
Love it. Well, JP, thank you so much for coming on, and it's a privilege of ours. You're gonna be one of the first of our podcasts coming out, so this will be really awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you
it's
so
wonderful to see you guys. And Alison, thank you so much for your kind words. And it is your job to cry. So
I do it.
That's your job on this podcast. So
yeah.
So, but it was really a pleasure and an honor. I'm really honored by everything, by being here. You've honored me very so much, and that'll make me cry if I keep talking about it. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Just remember, guys, make haste slowly, and we'll be back next week. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.